Hi everyone, thanks for joining in today. Just want to welcome Stella Quinn to our group. So thanks so much for joining us. Stella's had a love affair with books since she first discovered the alphabet. She lives in sunny Queensland now, but has lived in England, Hong Kong, and Papua New Guinea. Boarding school in Queensland country town left Stella with a love of small towns and heritage buildings. And that reminds me, we recently had an author who spoke about her boarding days, which was really, really great. And a fear of Chanel bedspreads and meatloaf. And that is why she loves writing rural romance. Stella is a keen Scrabble player. She's very partial to her 4 kids and anything with 4 furry feet. And she is a mediocre grower of orchids, an active member of Romance Writers of Australia, and Stella has won their Emerald, Sapphire, and Valerie Pav Awards and finalised in the Romantic Book of the Year award. Her latest book is The Vet from Snowy River, which hopefully I can
Matching.
show my, yep. And I've just finished reading it and have to say that it was 5 out of 5 for me, my first
Aww.
5 out of 5 this month. So really enjoyed it. Loved reading it, and probably good to take me away from current things that are happening here in Sydney. So thanks so much for joining us. And Stella's also just told me that if anyone asks a question during the Facebook Live, you'll have a chance to win a copy of one of her signed books. So that's really exciting. So please type any questions you have in comments. So just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a bit about the vet from Snowy River.
Sure. Okay. So many years ago, I had an old dog, and I have a brother-in-law who's a country vet in Queensland, and we were up there with our Labrador, and he had a snake bite victim in his clinic. And apparently, if a dog gets a snake bite, they give it a blood transfusion from a healthy dog. And he said, would Rolly, my dog, like to be a hero and donate some blood? And I said, I think Rolly would like that very much. So I went in as vet assistant, and we saved this dog from snake bite. And it was such a wonderful experience. That was the moment I thought, I'm writing a book about a country vet. So it sat on the back burner then for a long time. And so that was sort of the kernel. And then, of course, that's not enough. You need to have some more stuff going on. So I had an idea about a woman who was working as a journalist outside of Canberra. And she had to be at a crossroads where everything had gone wrong. So she had an elderly aunt whose health was failing. She had put her into an aged care home where she wasn't happy with the quality of service. She then made a probably very poor decision to try and get involved in the way her aunt was being cared for, but she didn't go about it the right way. And then she broke up with her boyfriend, lost her job, got a charge with a crime, and hit rock bottom. So rock bottom for her she had to sort of try and start digging her way out of it. And she understood that she had to dig her way out through hard work. But what could she do now? She couldn't be a journalist because she just lost her job. She could bake. So she found a new home for her aunt in Cooma, and then moved into a little town nearby, took out a lease on an old Federation building and opened up the Billy Button Cafe. And her job in her mind was, I'm here to work. I screw up every relationship I try to deal with. Yeah. That's my whole focus is. Hard work is going to cure me of my guilt, and I'm not going to make dumb decisions anytime ever again. Of course, then the prodigal son walks into the bakery, and all her plans go a little bit pear-shaped because he's a total sweetheart, and she's not used to people being sweethearts. And she doesn't really know how to deal with someone who's just genuinely adorable. And our lovely Josh the vet, he's adorable. He is the prodigal son. he was a bit of a golden boy in Hanrahan when he was a kid, got a scholarship to go to the university and study vet science, but then he knocked up his high school science teacher and his plans all came tumbling down. And he had to work in construction because he was a teenage dad. And so the story opens 16 years later, and he's finally got his act together. He's come back to town. He's finally a vet. He's got this disgruntled 15-year-old, who's being negative about every decision he makes. And then he walks into the vet and he sees Vera and he's like, well, hello, you would be a great addition to my nesting plan to make my life finally get on track. So then that's sort of how it all unfolds.
And the setting of the book, is that somewhat like a location that you're quite familiar with, or because you live in Brisbane, but it's
I do live in Brisbane. Yeah, I have not been to the Snow Mountains since I was a kid, and I've been booked to go there twice, but COVID. But when I was at that country boarding school, we were all taken on a bus to see The Man from Snow River. And I just love that. Now, I am that movie's biggest fan in the whole world. I'm pretty sure. I've seen it 1,000 times. I love Tom Burlinson. I love Sigrid Thornton. I love them all. Jack Thompson. The horses, the snow, it's such a different sort of beauty. I just love it so much. So that was the only place I wanted to set it because I wanted a cold weather sort of feel to this story, and I wanted it to be in a place where there could have been a gold rush town because there's a bit of a subplot going through with Josh's building. There's an avaricious developer is trying to take his building, and he and his sister have to sort of fight for it. So it had to be an old town that had a small, that must have had money in it back in Federation time. So it needed to be a gold rush town.
So were you actually planning to visit there when you were writing, but you weren't?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Twice.
Yeah.
Twice. I was going to go.
So
one
how
January.
hard was it to be able to not to be able to?
I was so upset about it. I'd booked to go. You can go do this walk called, I think it's called something like the Rooftop of Australia, where you go up the ski lift to Thredbo. And then you can go up the ski lift in summer and then walk through all these wildflowers and do all these lovely, like walk down the hill. So that the ski lift does the hard work. And then you just sort of, walk down. Yeah, I was going to go to Crackenback, Cooma and Thredbo and sort of spend some time. Yeah, but next year, maybe, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be writing a sequel. So
a sequel, that sounds exciting.
So then, and the sequel in my head is a lot more, is like The Vet from Snow River is very much set around a small town and all the small towns sort of eccentric add-on characters, whereas the sequel in my head is a bit more on a property just out of town. So it'd be great to go and ride a horse and, really smell the trees and really feel it.
No, that sounds really exciting. I'm sure so we've got a lot of people watching. A lot of people have said they've already read your book and really, really loved it. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people out there excited to hear that you are thinking of a sequel. Kelly said your books are so popular with Australian readers. Do you find that you have a large fan base in any other countries?
Because this is a debut, this is my first Australian print book, and so HarperCollins has printed it in Australia and New Zealand. But if you wanted to buy it overseas, it'd have to be an ebook. So the push really for this one has been to the local market to get a feel for, would it be well received? But I'm feeling like there's a lot of people who would enjoy the story.
Yeah. And we have a lot of members from around the world, so hopefully they'll be able to check out your book as well. I'm sure, like Amazon or Book Depository or someone like that, they'd probably be able to order it as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and it's actually an ebook sale at the moment until the 14th of August, so 4 more sleeps,
Mm.
$2.99 for an
Oh,
ebook.
wow.
So there, I know it's sitting at #1 in Amazon. They call it Western romance.
Mm.
That's, we would say rural, but the Amazon term is
Is
Western.
that
But
the American? Is that
yeah,
the
yeah. So
American
it's sitting
term?
at
Yeah.
#1, and well, it was the other day when I looked at Western romance. So yeah, perfect time to go and get an ebook.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Belinda's wondering how you chose your characters' names.
Well, one of my good friends, Marianne, every time she sees me, she says, "I don't like that name. I don't like that name, Vera." Yeah, Josh just came fully formed into my head. I was trying to write the most adorable guy ever, and for some reason, he just had to be called Josh. Yeah, and Vera, I liked the sound of it because she's got an Italian sound. She's of Italian heritage, which and she uses Italian recipes in her bakery. Vera Peretti, it just had a bit of a role. Yeah, I don't know how it arrived. Sometimes when I'm looking for names, particularly secondary characters, I look at my bookshelf because I sit and write near a bookshelf. I look at my bookshelf and I read all the authors and I jumble up first names and last names like a sort of random picker.
And do you have requests from friends or family to put their names in your books?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Not yet.
I've just been writing. I just sent off my second manuscript to HarperCollins last week, and in it there's this sort of cranky, vicious bank manager, and I've named her after one of my friends I went to boarding school with, who worked in a bank for about 20 years. Okay. So I emailed her and said, "I've used your name for this really nasty bank." Anyway, she thought that was hilarious. She was thrilled. So she's the only one. Oh, and my dog actually features. A lot of the dogs' names have pet names tend to come from my lifetime of pet ownership.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. And could you tell us anything about what you've just finished writing?
So because this was my first book with HarperCollins, the publishers suggested. So I've got book 2 of this set in hand. His sister's story, sort of pretty solid in my head. But she suggested I write something like rural romance, but set in have a different sort of world. That way, you sort of, if the vet from Snow River hadn't found its home in the market, which fortunately it had, but if it hadn't, then it would be sort of, another opportunity. So I've set this one in a macadamia farm in northern South Wales.
Yeah,
quite a different feel, but still, you can tell. Can you tell I love bush poetry? So still got the same vibe. And anyone who's read it will know I go a bit nuts with secondary characters. I like them being a bit fun and a bit interesting and sort of 3-dimensional. Same sort of thing. Yeah.
And what I really liked about the vet from Snow River is that as you got into it more, there were quite a lot of twists and turns. I found a lot of things popped up that I really wasn't expecting to pop up.
I had to do a bit of research into the Surveillance Devices Act of New South Wales, and I had no idea that the problem isn't the taking secret vision of someone, it's taking secret recording of their conversation. That was a much greater sin. So yeah, it's interesting. You start with a little idea, and then you've got to research it, and you go down this rabbit hole, and all this sort of new information just pops up.
Yeah. So will your next book be like that as well, with lots of twists and turns? And
there's a bit of an historical. I'm a member. There's a great Facebook group called Rachel John's Book Club.
Oh yes,
and,
lots of us.
The rural readers love it, and I love it. People have really genuine conversations about why they've loved something. And there was a thread on there one day about what do you like to read in a book, and someone said, "I love a bit of history. I love to learn something I didn't know about history." And a heap of people responded and said they love to learn a little bit of something they didn't know. So I have my main female character finds something, which I cannot reveal, in a shed. and it's got a bit of an historical angle to that thing she finds. So yeah, there's a lot of she has to uncover quite a bit of information to resolve the mystery of this shed and this thing she's found, because it impacts on her life in a way she wasn't expecting.
Okay. And do you hope that will be out next year for people to read?
In theory, June 2022.
Yeah.
But the publisher's just got the first draft, so there could be quite a lot of, schmoozing to happen between now and then too. Because when I'm the only person who's read it, and you become blind after a while. You just can't even be objective at all. So now they'll read it and they'll say, you've gone a little crazy in this direction. Maybe pull it back. And maybe we need a bit more with this story. They sort of can tell you where, if you're a bit thin in one area but a bit too fat in the other area, they can sort of guide you to make that next edit so it ends up a bit more even-handed.
And Jill's wondering if you've always wanted to be an author.
Always. Huge reader. And then when I was I went to uni and did not, and I was one of those people who just messed around horribly at uni. But I did do a class in creative writing, and there was this crusty old lecturer bloke, and we all had to write a creative piece on a movie. And I had been to see La Bamba. I don't even remember La Bamba.
Yeah,
like it's about Richie Valens.
Yeah.
And I just cry. I mean, it's a sad movie. Anyway, so I wrote this piece about La Bamba, and he pulled it apart. He said it was the worst thing he'd ever written.
Okay.
Worst thing he'd ever read. And it, that knocked me for, I would say, 20 years. Like, I didn't think about it every day. I've got 4 kids. I was busy, but it really did suck out confidence. It took a long time to rebuild. And it wasn't until my 4th child sort of got a bit older, and, you could see through that. You're not spending every waking minute when you're not at work, like cooking meals involving mince and, filling tuck shop paper bags, that I really decided to get serious again. Yeah.
And so what sort of career did you have before you became an author?
I have a really sexy, fun career, and everybody in my career is really attractive, and we are accountants.
Oh, exciting.
I know there's this myth that accountants are the most boring people alive, but you know what? Because we're not allowed to be creative at work, means we can be really creative when we're at home.
And Jill's wondering, did you use photos or found videos to look at, seeing as you weren't able to visit the snowy mountain?
Oh, yeah, I did. There is some fantastic guy had done video footage on YouTube of walking down the streets of Cooma.
Oh, really?
And he had done no editing of this thing at all. So it was like, this is the laundromat, and then this is the park bench, and It was incredible. And there was a great website called, I think, the Kosciuszko Huts Association website, because I sort of get involved in a bit of old building restoration in there. Fantastic stories of the volunteers coming together and restoring, trying to keep these old shepherd's huts at least functional enough so people could go and see what they might have been like back when, the area was first being developed for like formal agriculture, as opposed to, I mean, there have been people there obviously for 40,000 years using it agriculturally, but yeah. But yeah, the internet's a wonderful thing when you're trapped by a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah. And Kelly's wondering if you have an all-time favourite romance novel, other than your own.
It would have to be, yes, I do. It would have to be Arabella by Georgette Heyer. It's my comfort read. Whenever I just can't think of anything to read, I just go grab that, and my copy of it might be on the shelf there. It's so ragged and torn. It's got like yellow sticky tape holding the pages together, and the font is tiny, and the space between the lines is tiny. So now I have to sort of wear like 3 pairs of glasses at once to read it. But yeah, that is my favourite book because it's so funny. I think Georgette Hay is a really funny writer. She sort of she can set up a long joke with like lots of scenes in a row, and then there'll be just this little punchline. Yeah, that's my favourite romance book.
Yeah. And I'm wondering like what you might have been reading lately, and if there is anything that you could recommend to us that you might have read this year. Or
Well, I've just started reading The Nancies by
yeah,
W.W.I.
that's a great
and I saw him talking on a podcast, I think, or maybe I heard him on a podcast, and it just sounded so engaging. And so I've just started reading that, and then someone recently put me onto an American author called Kristen Higgins. She writes very funny, but also like warm, all the feels books. What else? Because I've just come out of 7 months of wrestling with my enormous manuscript. I've struggled to read in that time. I tend to reread things that I've already read rather than read something new. I read the Dictionary of Lost Words from the book club.
Yeah, another great one.
Which was, I wasn't loving it at the beginning. I found her quite passive, and I kept thinking, just come on, like speak up to these old codgers. But of course, they didn't, because women, we were just supposed to keep our mouth shut and iron someone's shirt. But yeah, I loved it in the end. It was a cracker of a book, yeah.
Yeah, no, some great recommendations there. Belinda's wondering if you had a favourite character to write.
Well, in The Vet from Snowy River, my favourite was probably Marigold. She's, for anyone who's not read it, she's this retired busybody who has boundless energy, and she runs a yoga club down on the lakeside, and she's always imposing on people to do her favours, but she's so adorable. People don't mind. And I liked having her, I particularly like if I was writing dialogue for her, I'd write it and then I'd immediately think, now how can I sort of write the opposite? Let's give her some personality, so when you see what she's doing and hear what she's saying, you're like, what? Just to give her, I didn't want her to be a cliche in any way of a older lady in a small town who knows everyone's business. I wanted her to have some real unique spark to her. And I think she turned out pretty well.
And Mary said, if your book, The Vet from Snowy River, was made into a movie, who would you like to see play the vet?
Yeah, so I do think about this a lot in the middle of the night. And the closest I come to really is a cross between, it's like in looks, I think we need to go with somewhere between Ryan Gosling and all of the Hemsworth brothers. But in personality, a bit like maybe Simon Baker in The Mentalist, because he's not a show pony. He's sort of kind. Like he's really settled in himself. He's not, he's like a strong guy who's really fun, but he's got a heart of gold under there. And he's a softie. Like he's being a vet because he loves animals and he loves people. Yeah.
What about Dr. Chris Brown?
Oh, yeah, he's adorable. I love that show. I've watched a lot of episodes.
Yeah. Kelly's wondering, for you, what is the best part of being an author?
I think I used to say before I was published, I used to say I'm in this for the glory. And you sort of do have to be, because it is very hard work and you have to be quite disciplined. And I think the best part actually is you have to be able to rely on yourself, because if you were to listen to, you do face a lot of rejection, particularly when you're just sort of starting out and you haven't really worked out how to write a beginning and a middle and an end and have it all, fit together. So you have to learn to read criticism and find the positives in it. And that's a great life skill to have. So that's a big positive. I really love hanging out with writer mates because we're a bit of a weird bunch. And so I can have conversations with my writer mates that I would never have with all my mate mates.
Mm.
And it's nice. It's a nice little writing club is a great.
And Cal's wondering if you had any say in the cover. She said that it's very appealing. And I'll put it up there.
Okay,
again.
so they did the cover, and they sent me a copy and said, "What do you think?" And my I've got about 1,000 children, and 3 of them were here, and they all went, "Oh, we love it." And I immediately emailed the publisher and said, "My girls love it. Must be great." And then I thought, he's got a little bit of a beard. And I was like, Josh doesn't have a beard. So then I was a bit hung up on the beard. And my writing group kept sending me these GIFs. There's some hilarious GIFs out there of men with these beards that were like the size of a hippopotamus sort of fluttering in the breeze. So they totally took the mickey out of me for being obsessed about this tiny beard. I love it. Now, and everyone has said to me that the colour has really stood out on the shelf, which is lovely to hear.
And I like the horse. I like the horse and the background, the horse.
Yeah. Apparently when often the publisher gets to choose the title, but that was my title. So I was pretty happy
that was your first title?
The first, sorry?
That was your first title, yeah.
Oh, actually, no, I'm telling a lie. When I first wrote it, I called it the Patchwork Project.
Okay.
Because there's a bit of a crafting group and they do a community like a quilt. So, no, initially it was the Patchwork Project, but when I first sent it into the publisher, I called it The Vet from Snowy River.
No, that's really interesting. Jill wonders if you have a regular writing routine.
I do. I write pretty much every day. So I do work 3 days a week in my really amazingly fun accounting job. And my kids don't go to school anymore. They're adults. So I get up. I'm a morning person. So I work in a coffee shop when it's not locked down for about an hour and a half before work. I'm there at 6 when it opens. And then Monday and Friday, I probably do about 5 hours each. Same Saturday and Sunday. It's pretty boring for other people around the house with me going. But because they're writing, there's a lot of non-writing stuff that happens in writing, like research, but also social media and, plotting projects. So yeah, I am a bit addicted. I think maybe you have to be. It's like an addiction.
And Kelly's saying she loves being transported to another time period or place, especially with lockdown. She's wondering if there's a place in the world or a time period that you would really love to write about in the future.
Well, I have sitting in my computer. I have a World War II manuscript set in Papua New Guinea, which is where I grew up. And that manuscript is very dear to my heart, but I sort of started writing it before I'd really got into the zone. So it's waiting for me to go back to it and give it a good look-see. The other place
So you think you will go back to it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it's a big manuscript. So, I sort of need to win that lotto on Thursday night and take a year off to finish it. I'd really like to go to Kakadu. There's a walk you can do. It's called something like the Jutbala Track. And I'd love to go there, do the walk. It's like a 7-day hike with a pack and you sleep in a swag and write something up there. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Jill's wondering if you did any writing courses or went to any conferences where there were sessions about writing to help develop your skills.
Yeah, I did. My first step was to join Romance Writers of Australia, and they have amazing courses that are very inexpensive. And then I went to the University of Queensland. They have a course there called Writing, Editing and Publishing. It's a postgrad, and you can do 4 subjects will be a postgrad diploma certificate or something, or you can do 8, or you can do 12, and it's a full master's. But as a postgrad student, it's very expensive per subject. So I did the 4 subject version, loved it, but the biggest thing I got out of that was faith in myself, because I was measuring myself against people who I could go and see once a week at lectures and handing stuff in with people. And the message I got back from that was, I can do it. I am as good as those people. Whereas before you sort of compete in a class like that, you just don't know if you're good or not, because how can you tell yourself? You just can't. You can't know until someone else tells you. So that was great in terms of building confidence. But then really I've done a lot of workshops through RWA, and their conferences are incredible. And I also go to the Historical Novel Society conference when it's on. It's going to be virtual this year, and I'm keen to join that. There's you can learn so much at those conferences. They're really inspiring, and they motivate you to run home and get typing.
And is that where you've made your author friends, from those sorts of places?
So through RWA, the first conference I went to was in Brisbane, and I live in Brisbane, so it was I didn't know anyone, but I didn't have to pay for accommodation, so it was an easy choice. And if I didn't like it, I hadn't really, had to sell the family cheap property to go. And they have a program there where you can try and get a critique partner, where you swap stuff. And a lady had reached out. I'd put my name into that pool, and a lady called Jane had reached out to me and said, "Do you want to be my swap partner?" I said, "Okay." And then we met at the conference. And she, luckily, is really friendly and knew lots of people. So she sort of took me under her wing a bit, and then we sort of met other people. And so it meant when you're chatting on the Facebook group for the RWA, you could put names to faces, and you do develop good friendships chitter-chattering online. Yeah, and they've been a great support, and we can swap projects with each other. And, if we've got a plot problem, we talk it out. It's really been very supportive.
And Nola's wondering, thinking of the Snowy Mountain, are you a horse rider or a skier?
Terrible at both. I went to boarding school in Toowoomba, and I did horse riding every Friday afternoon. But, back in those days, like, my parents must have just thought that the school organised stuff, because I didn't even have, like, jeans when we got there, because we lived in New Guinea then. And I had to wear my school shoes because I didn't have riding boots. And my horse was this little white pony called Cricket, you bitch.
Oh.
And I do remember this, like, I did it for a year, and on about perhaps the final score, because I was a little scared of Cricket, we rode down this little gully, and the horse had to sort of jump across a little creek and then do a U-turn and go up the other side. So it was down, jump, up. Anyway, so he went down, he jumped, I slid off his bum, landed in the creek, it was freezing. And that was sort of the my dog's just come to visit.
Oh.
He's just come to say hello.
Oh, cute.
Joey, who features
hi,
in many
Joey.
of my blogs. Off you go, mate. He thinks he's allowed on couches.
Nola's wondering if you read your reviews.
Yes, that's a really tough question. Sort of. So I read them like this because I want to read them, but I'm scared of losing my mojo if I were to read something like bad. I'm happy to read. Like I could read a 3, a 4, and a 5-star review very happily. But if I got a 2-star review, I would feel gutted.
Yeah.
And if I was having to write, let's say, for the last, say, month, I've not been able to read any reviews because I was writing the happy ending for my last manuscript. So I had to be in a, love is wonderful, everything's great state of mind. And if I were to read a 2-star review, I wouldn't be able to write a happy ending. So sometimes I get my kids to read them for me. I say, just quickly go on Goodreads. and they'll say, yeah, it's safe, you're good. And then I can read them. But I've had some wonderful people reach out to me, book bloggers on Instagram in particular. They're just so generous with their time and really go to a lot of trouble. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's hard. Yeah, that is hard to know whether to read them or not. And just reminding people again, if you're watching, that Stella said that we'll choose someone later to send away a signed copy of her book. So please keep the questions coming. We've had some really great ones so far. I'm wondering what you hope readers will love about your books.
I hope that they will. I'm really trying to write a book that makes you feel good, feel warm. I'm not trying to scare anyone or traumatize anyone. I want it to be. I love the redemption arc. That's my favourite trope in rural romance, where that idea that we can all really make stupid, dumb decisions because we're people. We're not robots. We mess things up often, but it doesn't have to be an end of anything. It can just be a beginning of something new, and hard work, or sometimes luck, but just hard work and a good attitude can really get you through a rocky patch. And I love that idea of being able to find a happier ending after you've been through a period of difficulty. And I love having a cast of characters who are there in the wings to step in and say, girlfriend, you're being an idiot, get your shit together. Because the community of a small town, I think, really helps. I think of the community I live among, they can really help me when stuff's not feeling so great. They can really help you find, a happier future.
And Nola said the book community seems so wonderful as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Jill says, in these days of COVID and lockdown, it's really good to be able to read something positive.
I have heard that a lot, actually. People are feeling like, and it's a bit, nostalgic. There's a slow pace. It's, no one's wearing high heels. It's a comforting read, yeah.
And how does it feel for you, though, having to write during lockdowns and that? How have you found that?
Well, lockdown's not bad for writers because other than not being able to travel, but it means people aren't inviting us out, or we're not having to make excuses about why we can't go to things because we're trying to crank out 10,000 words that weekend. So in terms of writing, and because I've been doing it a while now, I'm very good at putting on my earphones and I get in the zone. And because when I'm writing, I'm sort of hanging out in Hanrahan or wherever I'm writing, I'm not really in lockdown. So it's as much of an escape to write it as it is to read it.
And what about promoting your book, though? How have you found that?
So I've had a lot of help from a publicist at HarperCollins. So she has organised quite a few things. So it was Book of the Month in a Rotary magazine in June, I think, which would have got a lot of readership probably from, say, the caravanning set. And she organised quite a few, like a radio interview, some Facebook sort of podcasty type events. I'm doing a book signing. I've had a few things cancelled. I was doing 2 events at the Romance Writers Conference, which should be on, in fact, right this weekend. It's been cancelled, of course. I've got a book signing in Northlake Dimmicks next week. I've got a couple of library events coming up in Brisbane, luckily, because if they were over the border,
Yeah.
I think they wouldn't be happening.
Mm.
And I've been blogging for Harper Collins has a website called romance.com.au, and they do really fun blogs on there, like, you know, what they just did a great one. It's called the Rural Romance Roadmap of Australia, and they've got a picture of Australia.
Oh, I think
And
I might.
they've put the romance books where they're set around it, so you can feed your way around the country, which is so fun.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a bit of blogging for that as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Mary is wondering if you found writing to be therapeutic during these difficult times.
Yeah, I have. Before writing took over my life, I used to do a lot of quilting, and I'm a mad knitter of tea cozies as well, and beanies.
Okay.
And that's therapeutic. Just it sort of quietens your brain. You sort of have to. Well, I have to concentrate when I knit and count. So it sort of slows your thought patterns, and it's sort of calming. And writing is the same in a different way. Whilst it's still being busy in their head, it's nothing to do with your life. So you're getting a bit of a break from whatever crap you've got going on. Yeah, it's, you're having to think about other people and how they would respond. And I do find it very therapeutic. I think it's wonderful.
No, that's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great chatting to you. And we've had some really, really wonderful questions from people, which has been great. Just wondering if you want to share how people can keep in touch with you.
Oh, sure. I've got a website, and it's www.stellaquinnauthor.com. And I've got a newsletter. If you just go on the website, it pops up. But I'm on Facebook, Stella Quinn, you'd find me. And I'm on Instagram, it's stella.quinn.author. Or if you're on Insta and you follow the hashtag the vet from Snowy River, all one word, I see it. It pops up on my thing. So I'm a late bloomer on Instagram. My kids had to teach me what the heck a reel was, but luckily they're all over this sort of stuff. So it's such a visual, quick, way to keep in touch with people.
And Mary's wondering if she can place an order for your beanies.
Oh, my beanies. I should have worn one. Yeah. I don't know if they're really like commercial, but I do love doing them.
No, that's great. Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. So bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad you came. Thanks so much, Jackie, for having me.
Thanks.
A real treat.